let's discuss forms in HTML. We will use a React application, but we will be discussing standard form features. Form uses the form element. Forms contain inputs of several types. Let's begin with an input of type text. There's our input box right there. In HTML, it's traditional for inputs to have a name attribute to identify the data point they're gathering. Let's suppose this is an input to take the user's first name. Let's call this fname. Let's also provide an ID of fname input, a placeholder of first name, and a max length of, say, 5 characters. Although, in real life, that would be a little tight. There's our placeholder working there. Let's test out our max length, and I can't type anymore. In plain HTML, max length would actually be spelled like that. But this is JSX, and we know there are small differences there, so let's go back to this and give a little bit more room there. It's good for users that inputs have labels associated with them. Labels use the label element, and there's 2 ways of using those. We can wrap the whole input with a label, and in this way associating the label with the input. Let's do first name, and there's the label right there. Or we can have the label element not wrap the input, but then we need to provide a for attribute that links the label to the ID of the input. It's just that in JSX, the for attribute is actually HTML4. Pointing to fname input ID right there. And this is the second way of creating labels. Let's create a dropdown now. Dropdowns use the select element. Inside, we place several options. Each option needs a little bit of text content. Let's do cars, because this is a dropdown to gather your favorite vehicle. So from the code point of view, each of these options must have a value. So let's suppose cars is a value of 1, trucks is 2, and planes is 3. So if I type a name of Peter and select trucks, the current value of the form is saved in the DOM. The value of this input is the string Peter, and the value of this select right now is 2. The select element will benefit from an ID there. Let's call this fav vehicle select, and let's call this data point fav vehicle. Now we're ready to add a label. Remember, this would just be for in plain HTML and needs to point to the ID. How about a checkbox now? Checkboxes are inputs of type checkbox. Let's also provide an ID. Is happy input. Whether is happy is the data point we're trying to gather. Let's call that is happy. Let's get a label going. And we're ready to create a submit button. The submit button can be another input, this time of type submit. So let's take a look at how this form behaves when we try and submit it. For this, we will open the Network tab, filter to Docs, and fill out our form. Let's do a first name of Luke, who likes planes and is happy. Hit submit, and something interesting just happened. The page went through a full reload and a network request was fired. A GET request to this particular URL with a query string attached at the end of the URL. This query string contains key value pairs. Here we see the data point of fname matching the name on the input element. A fav vehicle of value 3 matching the name of this dropdown and the value we selected, as well as is happy, which is the name of the third data point, with a default value of on, although we can customize the checkbox so the value will be something else when checked. For that, let's use the value attribute again with a value of yeah. Let's clean up the Network tab and submit again. Josh likes trucks, is happy, submit. And there we can see GET request firing to this URL by default because we didn't specify otherwise, and a query string attached at the end. That is the way we can hand information over to the server using simply a GET request, which by convention doesn't usually have a payload or a request body. So now the value for the checked checkbox is yeah. There's other ways in which inputs might be different when submitting the form. Let's clean up again, leave the first name empty, select cars there. Let's not touch the checkbox, hit submit, and here's our GET request with a shorter query string. This time only the fname and fav vehicle data points were taken into consideration. We didn't let the server know anything about the unchecked checkbox. Fname did appear just with an empty string as its value. We can control where this request happens. All we need to do is supply a valid URL in an action attribute on the form element. For example, we could submit this form over to Wikipedia. Take that for a drive. And let's do Delba likes trucks, is happy, submit. And the page again fully reloads. We're shown Wikipedia, and on the Network tab we can see the request that actually fired. A GET request with the information from the form attached to the end of the URL in the form of a query string. This question mark indicates the beginning of the query string, and from then on we have key value pairs separated by ampersands. Again, each key is the name we gave each input. And remember, the key value pair for the checkbox will be omitted completely if the checkbox isn't checked. Forms can also ship their values to the server using POST requests. For that, we use the method attribute. Let's say POST here. Prepare the form, clean up the Network tab, and let's do Anna likes cars, is happy, submit. And there's our POST request, which fails to this URL because we removed the action attribute, so it defaulted back to the same URL. And here at the bottom, we can see the body of the request containing the key value pairs. If we just submit the form like that, let's clean that up, submit, we can see the key value pair for the checkbox got omitted completely. Of course, with React, we don't want to fire requests to servers using the HTML's default behavior. Normally, we will prevent the default behavior of forms of causing a network request right away and use JavaScript to fire the request instead. And that is the subject of future videos.